Truck-kun strikes again in the most heretical last boss queen from Villainess to Savior. Our main character wakes up in the 8-year-old body of her favorite game's Villainess and must rebuild Pride's reputation now that she has to live as her to avoid a future execution. The story regularly moves through phases of her life, so we don't stay a small child for very long. And even then, she still acts with most of the maturity of her previous 18 years of life. Because this world is based on an otome game, there are plenty of handsome men in Pride's sphere. Whether it's because they respect her or are in fealty contracts is a different story. In the process of fixing the problems in her own country of Frisia, she gathers more men for the harem. Although, because her little sister was the heroine of the game, she doesn't seem to think of any of the guys as romantic options for herself. In fact, her mind is so otherwise occupied avoiding disasters that I'm not sure she's considering romance at all.
This makes an interesting setup that does feel slightly different from other villainesses, as she is working with the original protagonist rather than how the roles tend to flip.
Stale is my favorite of our choices, though. He's a little more reserved, but he's trying to play royal politics in Pride's favor and support her in any way he can. I think out of all of the guys, he loves her most for her and not just for her position and what she's capable of. But maybe that's just because he's been with her since the beginning of her reincarnation journey.
I agree that Stale feels most connected to her for various reasons.
As an aside, there is so much crying in this show. Like, every character, all the time, across multiple episodes, is capable of having a breakdown. And while I don't think that people should repress their feelings, it was a little overwhelming. As someone who gets secondhand embarrassment from crying, I struggled a bit, but I know my reaction isn't always the norm, so your mileage may vary.
Especially at the beginning, there is a lot of high-stakes situations for our characters. So it does make sense that breakdowns would occur in those situations.
The magic of the special abilities keeps things interesting. They were able to use it to flesh out characters a bit more, and it was fun to learn who was capable of what and to what extent. The story was also able to utilize their magic abilities as a problem-solving tool, which I enjoyed.
I wish the abilities were used more, but it might make some of the problem-solving too easy. I do enjoy when she claims she's having a premonition, when it's just her previous game knowledge.
We're treated to many glimpses of the events of the game as Pride works to rewrite them in real time, but the show also flashes back to its own footage a lot. Sometimes it feels like it's stalling forward progress, but I do appreciate that they use a black border and a wavering effect to differentiate between those moments and real-time action.
I know monarchies are a strong thing, but with what Pride of the game did, I'm very surprised she wasn't usurped sooner.
It bothers me that she is so firm in the belief that even with her soul in Pride's driver's seat, that the terrible future will come to pass even though she's carrying out no evil deeds. The only way for her to personally ruin the kingdom is to follow the same horrible path as Pride from the game, which she is the furthest thing from doing. Sometimes I want to shake these girls and be like, all of your actions have been kind and helpful, so obviously the horrible thing won't come to pass. Why are you so convinced that you'll end up on trial for actions you have not committed?
It is hard to say because the power of destiny does appear to be very strong in this world, as all of the changes haven't had the same butterfly effect that you would expect, normally with a lot of major events still happening the same, even with the major changes around them.
Towards the end, we saw a brief glimpse of a possible bad guy when the hot air balloon appeared and dropped some bombs on our main cast. But they didn't identify themselves or indicate allegiance to a specific place, so it's still a complete mystery as to what that was about. I think the strength of the show is the character interactions, especially between Pride, Stale, and Arthur, so Season 1 was a good 7 out of 10. Season 2 of the most heretical last boss queen from Villainess to Savior did a small time skip, aging up the characters between seasons, which felt a little jarring.
They really did buff Pride's assets. Like, how can Stale teleport so many more people now?
They had also set up a fairly strong expectation in the beginning that Stale was going to be her fiancé and prince consort, but then all of a sudden Season 2 is throwing other fiancés at us without explanation as to why the plan changed. I think this season suffered most from having its focus orbit around these two new male characters and having to visit their countries. This setup made it so that we barely got to enjoy the character dynamics we'd established and enjoyed from the first season. And it feels a little frustrating to have Pride go poking her nose into other countries' problems when she's been so worried about the affairs of her own country. Considering that protecting her family and Frisia from conflict was her driving force last season, it made focusing externally feel a little weird.
I liked that we were introduced to more of the world this season, but it was a little hard to get invested in them at this point, especially with where we left off at the end of this season. But hopefully the world will continue to be fleshed out in a Season 3 if we get it.
The first 4 episodes were dedicated to solving Prince Leon's problems and bringing him into the harem. Making political alliances. And while the actions of Pride in the game have always been awful, what she did to Leon in the game backstory was especially dark to watch. From episode 7 until the ending, the time is dedicated to Prince Cedric. I think dealing with him is the angriest we've ever seen Pride, and I felt that alongside her because he was frustrating. It's here that events finally begin to diverge from her game knowledge, though. She mentions before they deploy to Cedric's country that the timeline of his brother's illness, for example, doesn't line up anymore.
This is another of those moments that really did feel like events of the game may happen regardless of what she does, as the world seems to still be playing out the main story beats at least.
Well, it leads me to question if there's another outside force exerting influence on the story that she's not aware of.
Like, a final boss? That isn't her?
Which means it must be said that there was still no resolution regarding the sneaky dude from the hot air balloon. He gets like 2 minutes of screen time per season and then just dips. The final episode leaving us at the dawn of a major international war was certainly a choice. And with the previous gap of 3 years between seasons, it makes me depressed thinking about how long we'll have to wait for the conflict resolution.
This was disappointing, but at least we wrapped up as much as we could with getting the preparations of the war in place, and we weren't left right in the middle of combat at least.
It's probably personal bias, but I was a little disappointed with season 2, so it was just a fine 6 out of 10.